These are the warm-up problems for Chapter 6, Section 3. And what we're working on in this section is the idea of expressing percent problems in terms of an equation. And the basic equation is that if there's some amount I'm trying to determine that is a percent of another amount which we will refer to as a base, then this is our basic formula. And you'll see it abbreviated as A is equal to P times B. Kind of a handy memorization aid here that I've found helpful is a little triangle with an A here for amount, a P here for percent, and a B in this corner for base. And here's the idea. If you are trying to determine A, the amount, then you multiply, and I'll just use the old-fashioned times sign here, you multiply the percent times the base. If you're trying to determine the percent, you divide the amount by the base, and if you're trying to determine base, you divide amount by a percent. So you're multiplying across, you're dividing up and down. Now, the only thing you have to be careful about in these problems is that when you are multiplying or when you're dividing, you must convert, if you're using the percent equation, you must convert your percent value to a decimal or to a fraction where you'd have a number over 100. And so, for example, this first problem, it's almost identically in the form that we just looked at. There is an amount which is equal to 5% of 39. Now, to do this calculation, quite simply, we would say that the amount is equal to, and this is where you got to be careful, you cannot use 5. You cannot use 5. So you must either say, this is either 5 times 1 over 100 times 39, or 5 times 0.01 times 39. And this calculation, if you'll pay attention to this calculation, what this is going to turn into is 0.05 multiplied times 39. And if you just will get into the sort of an automatic habit form of O, 5% is equal to drop percent sign, move decimal 2 places left. Drop percent sign, move decimal 2 places left. So that's what I did here. I took the percent number, dropped the decimal, dropped the percent sign, and then the logic of the 0, 1 is it's a way to express percent as a number per 100, and we have dropped the percent sign, move the decimal 2 places left. So you're going to see that kind of carried through all the way through here. And so what was the answer to this one? Well, it was 5% of 39, and so if we will bring out the calculator, we might as well let it help us out on some of these. So it's going to be 0.05 times 39. And can you see that? 0.05 times 39, which is equal to 1.95. Is that one of my answer choices? Well, guess what? Guess what? They didn't want me to solve this thing. They didn't want me to solve it. They just wanted me to put it in the formula. Oh, okay. So I didn't have to solve it. So which one was it? Let's see. It's going to be the one that has the amount is equal to 5% times 39. Now, I wish they had not used the letter N here, because that's confusing, because in other places they say The definition of percent is the number over 100. I wish they would have just said its amount is equal, but they didn't. So we'll have to deal with that. Here we go. 84% of 59 is what? So if you look at this one, you can tell that all they did was they said, well, the amount is equal to percent, 84% multiplied times 59. So they just rearranged the sequencing of the calculation. Instead of putting the amount on the left, they put the amount on the right. It's still the same calculation. We're going to multiply a value 59 times 84%. So the amount we're looking for, and here they call it Y, which is okay there, but they would be a little more consistent. It would make it clearer for us. And what percent? 15 is what percent of 79? How do we find percent? Well, how do we find 15%? 15%. 15 is what percent of 79? Okay, so we're trying to find percent. And how do we do that? Well, we say that the percent, if you remember the little memory jogger up here, is it's the amount divided by the base. So do we have one of these that's going to work for us? 15 is what percent of 79? Golly. And these are really poorly worded problems because this is the answer, but we're going to have to do a little more work, right? We're going to have to isolate P, and we're going to have to say it is 15 divided by 79. So these problems are a little bit, the terminology is a little confusing on them, but we'll survive that. So let's see if we got all these right. We had BDA. So yep, we got BDA. Maybe they'll get better. Oh, we're going to solve one. This will be great. What is 35% of 600? All right. Amount is percent times base. Remember, you got to turn that into a decimal. And there it is. Amount is 0.35 times 600. And I went through a little conversation in the class to say, look, let's think about what the size of this answer might be. And the thought was, well, if I had 100% of 600, the answer would be, if 100% of 600, the answer would be 600. Okay, makes sense. If I had 50% of 600, the answer would be 300. Half of 600 is 300. So this is less than 50%. Obviously, 35% is less than 50%. So I'm looking for a number that's smaller than 300. And then the answer I got was 210. Now, that wasn't necessary. It's just that sometimes with problems, if you can sort of anticipate what the answer might be, or at least the magnitude of the answer, then you might help yourself a little bit. Because, for example, look, this whole calculation hinges on doing this decimal multiplication correct. In other words, you had to get the decimal point here and multiply it times 600. If you put the decimal point anywhere else, for example, if you just use 35, you're going to get 2100. If you move it too far, you're either going to get 2.1 or 21. So that's why I went through the little exercise about what would the answer be. Well, 210 looks like a reasonable answer based on what we said a minute ago about 35% is a little less than 50%, and if it was 50%, it would be 300. What is, okay, so here's another one. Here's another one that's nothing more than almost a straight out of amount equals percent times base. 8% of 2200. Again, we're going to say 0.08 times 2200 and get 176. Now, if you wanted to experiment around and try this, you could say, well, 8 times 1 over 100 times 2200. See what you get. Well, what are you going to get? Hope you follow what I just did. 176. So you'll notice that the 100 canceled up this way into the 2200. Frankly, the easiest way to do these is just convert to a decimal because we are probably going to be using a calculator and it's just the natural thing to do. What percent of 75 is 35? So where's that memory jogger that I had a minute ago? I'm trying to find percent. I'm trying to find percent. And what do? Amount divided by base. Amount divided by base. So what percent of 875 is 35? And I've made the point in the class that in these word problems, you will normally find base right after the word of. So what's the formula we use? The percent is equal to the amount over the base, and the amount is 35, and the base is 875. Now, when you do that calculation, you're going to have to realize what's about to happen. So we're going to have 35 divided by 875, which is 0.04. That's not the answer. What? Think about it for a minute. I converted in the previous problems, when I got a percent, I converted it to a decimal. In this case, I'm getting a decimal answer, and I've got to convert it to a percent. So what does 0.04 convert to as a percent? Well, 0.04 over 1. To be a percent number, this needs to be 100. Multiply that times 100. And to keep equivalent fractions, multiply that times 100. And you're going to get 4, which is 4%, right? So remember, how do you convert a decimal to a percent? Move the decimal 2 places right, add percent sign. So we got 4%. 120 is what percentage of 15? All right, the same kind of problem. We're trying to find percent. 120 is what percentage of 15? In this case, the base is a smaller value. Don't let that confuse you. The base is a smaller value. So what did we do? We said, well, percent equals amount divided by base. Percent equals amount divided by base, because the base is 15. It's a smaller value here. So when you do the setup, you get 8. That's not the answer. You got to turn that. What do you mean you got to turn that? Well, 8 has a decimal point here, an implied, unwritten, understood decimal point right after the ones place value. So move 2 places right, add percent sign. So you're going to get 800%. Now, if you look at it from this point of view, I have 8 over 1, and I want it to be the corresponding value over 100. Multiply this by 100 and that by 100, you get 800 over 100, therefore it's 800%. And that one was C. 94 is 20% of what? Of what? Of what? So what am I trying to find here? I'm trying to find base. How do I find base? I take the amount and divide it by the percent. So how do I find base? I take the amount, which is 94, and I divide it by the percent. Notice, I told you when we do multiplying and dividing with percents, we've got to turn the percent into a decimal. How did I do that? 20 over 100, 20 hundredths, 0.20. Drop percent sign, move decimal 2 places left. So there's your division, and there's your answer, 470. 144 is 48% of what? Okay, here we go again. I'm trying to find base. Percent's 48. Amount's 144. So it's going to be 144 divided by 48. And again, I've got to turn the 48 into a decimal to do that work. So it's 144 divided by 0.48, which is 300 is the answer to that one. Hey, and we've done them all. Okay. Well, some of them were a little tricky, but not too bad. And the way to be successful with these problems is to work a bunch of them. Just work a bunch of them, because they will confuse you. Because you've got an opportunity every time to determine one value. You're always going to be finding one of the 3 values. You're going to be trying to find the amount given percent and base. or you're going to be trying to find percent given amount in base, or you're trying to find base given amount in percent. So you're going to be given two of them, and you got to find the third one. However, the calculations to find each of them are different. And again, if you will use this little memory jogger here, it's easy to remember. A, P, B, A's at the top, P and B at the bottom, multiply across the bottom. A divides by P, A divides by B. And so maybe that'll be something you